Hey guys, how you doing? Luna here with a new video. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm really excited because we have yet another video about the Beatles. You know, my favorite thing in the world is to talk about my favorite band, and this time we're talking about two of the main members of the band, which is George Harrison and John Lennon. We're facing them off against each other in a brand new episode of the Versus series. This is actually one of the most requested videos, especially in that Paul McCartney versus John Lennon video I did about a year ago. And the main reason why I really never made this video was because I personally believe that it would be kind of unfair. I believe that the difference in quality between these two discographies is massive, so I think that a video on George Harrison versus John Lennon is kind of pointless. However, since it has been requested multiple times, and honestly, based on the fact that this channel isn't really watched by that many people, I think it would be kind of disrespectful not to fulfill the requests of my subscribers. Don't get me wrong, I'm really grateful for every single one of you, and I love the fact that I have a following, even if it's really small. I really appreciate the fact that you guys want me to do certain type of videos and you care about my opinion on this sort of topic. So that's mainly the reason why I decided to make this video at last. If you watch any of my other Versus videos, then I'm pretty sure you kind of know how this goes, but if you haven't, we use 4 different categories to determine who's the winner in this video, and that is popularity, influence, performance, and discography. Discography being the most important one, and actually I say this all the time, but I'm going to repeat it in this video. Discography is not only the most important category, but whoever wins that category basically wins this entire video, because in my opinion, discography is the most important thing an artist has. Let me also say that this is only my personal opinion, so if you have your own, and I'm pretty sure you do, go ahead and leave it down below in the comments and I'll make sure to check it out. With that being said, let's not delay this any further and go with the first category, popularity. Popularity is by far the most meaningless category in this video because I personally don't really care, but a lot of people do care about popularity and they think it's a really big part of the legacy of the artist, so that's the reason why I always include it in the videos. And in this case, you know, between George Harrison and John Lennon, I think it's pretty safe to say that John takes the point. I don't think there's a single human being in the world that knows anything about the Beatles and, you know, about George and John that think that George has even a chance of winning in this category, because even when John was in the Beatles, you know, when they were both in the Beatles, John was the most popular one. John was the most attractive one to the people, not only because of, you know, his looks. Obviously John was really handsome back in the day, but also because of his ability to speak, to communicate, to entertain people. This allowed him to become the most popular member of the band, yes, even more popular than Paul McCartney, even if it wasn't always on a positive note, as we all know, with a lot of his controversies, like the more popular than Jesus thing, like the Bet for Peace thing, and his tragic assassination in 1980 also played a really big part in his popularity, even though it's really disturbing and weird and just weird to think about the fact that one's assassination helps you, you know, get more popularity. But, you know, pretty much because of all these different factors, John is one of the most popular human beings in history. George was also a really popular celebrity back when he was with the Beatles, but he wasn't really as big as John. And, you know, in the early 70s, maybe at a certain point he was as popular as John with the whole Beatles breakup thing and the fact that he was so outspoken about the whole situation. I think it helped a lot. Also, the whole thing with drugs and LSD and, you know, this psychedelic things that he was talking about at the time. He was also really popular, but as he went on to release more music that wasn't nearly as interesting as All Things Must Pass and Living in the Material World, I think a lot of people forgot about him, which led him to basically be a B-list celebrity by the end of the 80s. So again, like a really popular celebrity, but not as close as John Lennon, so John takes the point in this category. Now we go with influence, which is a far more important category. You know, the influence that your music had on the music industry and in the world overall is a really big part of your legacy as an artist, and in this case, I think John takes the point as well, because even though George Harrison had a lot of influence in the psychedelic scene back in 1967 and 1968 with songs like Blue Jay, Without You, Love You Too, with this whole Indian classical music being mixed into rock music and also a little bit of psychedelic stuff over there, I think that one can argue that John Lennon's contribution not only to the psychedelic movement but also to rock and roll and to, you know, vocal performance overall is way bigger and way more significant, because John basically changed the way that people perform music back then. Lennon. More focused on emotion and, just raw feelings out there instead of vocal melodies and harmonies. So it's really easy to argue that John takes a point in this category, not because George wasn't influential at all, it's because he's facing off against one of the most influential artists of the 60s. So yeah, John takes a point in this one too. Now let's go with performance, and I know what a lot of you are thinking. If you just said in the previous category that John Lennon had a massive impact in the way that musicians perform their songs, then he obviously takes a point in this one. And if you say that, then you're probably right, because John Lennon is one of the best performers of all time. Not only in the Beatles catalog, which you have an amazing set of songs like Julia, like Across the Universe, but you also have his whole discography, having albums like Plastic Ono Band and Imagine, showcasing some of the best performances he ever made with tracks like Mother, God, Well, 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 and the title track of the album Imagine. However, George Harrison has a way more melodic voice, and we can see that in songs like Something, Here Comes the Sun, and when it comes to his solo discography, Behind That Locked Door, My Sweet Lord, If Not For You, he has some really beautiful performances in his solo discography, to the point where I would even rather his interpretation of If Not For You over the one Bob Dylan released in the album New Morning. So I think that when it comes to a ballad or something close to a ballad, I would very much rather to have George Harrison on that song. But when it comes to everything else, and this saying that John Lennon is also really good at singing his ballads, I would say that John Lennon takes the point in here because his versatility is amazing. Obviously, his songwriting skills have a lot to do because George Harrison never really tried to do songs that were as cutting edge and as groundbreaking as the one John Lennon has in discography, and we'll talk about that later on in the video. But overall, I think that John Lennon showcased a wider range in terms of what he could do with his voice, and for that reason I'm going to give him the point when it comes to performance. Now let's go with the most important category on the video. Even though it's 3-0 in favor of John, if George Harrison manages to win this category, I would give him the win in the entire video. So let's see how he does. In George Harrison's side, we have albums like All Things Must Pass, we have records like Living in the Material World, and we have Cloud 9. Those three would be considered as his best projects, right? But when it comes to John Lennon in his solo discography, we have Plastic Ono Band, Imagine, and Double Fantasy, which also enjoys the collaboration of Yoko Ono. Although we can all agree that Yoko seems like a bit of an obstacle instead of an aid when it comes to Double Fantasy. Now, I think the only proper way to do this category would be who has the best album in each discography. It would definitely be John if you were to look at it that way, because John has Plastic Ono Band, which is considered to be one of the greatest albums of all time, and actually a lot of people, even non-John fans, consider Plastic Ono Band to be the greatest album ever, and they have a lot of reasons to think so, because Plastic Ono Band is one of the greatest examples of emotion put into music, of expressing yourself through the songs in a way that, in my opinion, we never really got to see again in the music industry. But George Harrison has All Things Must Pass, which for a lot of people is the greatest albums out of the Beatles solo discography, which is a huge statement considering that we have two of the best discographies of all time in the case of John Lennon and Paul McCartney. So having these two albums in mind, who takes the win? Well, in my opinion, I believe that John Lennon still takes the win because, All Things Must Pass is a way more solid album. It has more tracks, and each track could, stand on their own. But Plastic Ono Band is such a special album, especially to me. The album really got me through some dark days, and I think it's mainly because of how honest John Lennon is in this album, not only with his words, but also with his voice. He's not really scared to go out of tune, to basically just scream into the microphone. He just wants to put his feelings out there, and I think that, at least in my opinion, I've never heard another album reach the same level of intensity and connection to the listener. And even if you were to consider their entire discography, I think that John Lennon would still take the point, because even though he has a few albums that are really bad, most of his discography is pretty solid. And when you look at George Harrison, that really isn't the case. He does have All Things Must Pass and Living in the Material World, which are two really good albums. However, after that, the only other album that is relatively good would be Cloud cloud9, living the rest of his discography in this weird mix of decent attempts to totally horrible albums like, Dark Horse, for example, Somewhere in London, some good tracks here and there, but overall it's just a really underwhelming discography. So for that reason, I'm gonna give John Lennon the point, and that leads me to my conclusion. And that conclusion is that even though I love both of them, they're both responsible for crafting the greatest discography of all time, and on their own they release some pretty good records too. The winner is John Lennon. It's undeniable. He wins in every single one of the categories. Obviously, I mean no disrespect to George Harrison. He's also an amazing artist and was one of the greatest artists from the 70s for sure. But when compared to John Lennon, which is one of the greatest of all time, it was really hard for him to win this video. I think that when you look at the influence, what John did for music and for the world overall, you can't really pair him with someone like George Harrison, which was more focused on living his life peacefully, on exploring his own feelings when it comes to religion. And I have to say that George Harrison was focused on filming too and being a director, which may have caused his the quality of his music to drop a little. Obviously John Lennon is the winner here, but we must not forget that George Harrison was also an amazing artist, and may they both rest in peace. That'll be it for today's video, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed. If you did, go ahead and leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any other videos that I upload. Once again, I want you guys to leave your opinion down below. I'm really excited to see if you disagree with me or if you agree with me. Whatever it is, just leave a comment down there. I always love to when you guys interact with the channel. But with that being said, once again, I hope that you enjoyed, and I hope that I can see you guys soon with a new video. But until then, bye.